Oh, I like the sound of that. That. Ooh, I must have this track on repeat. Repeat. Oh, you hear that? You hear that? Oh, let's break it down. Oh, let's break it down. Oh, let's break it. Break it. Break it down. Let's drop the beat. Beat. Let's get you healed up. Let's get you healed up. Healed up. Healed. Healed up. Yeah, let's move it, people. Let's move it, people. Yeah, let's pick it up. Lucio coming at you. Coming at you. Yeah, time to heal up. Oh, turn it up. Up. Turn it up. Turn it up. Turn it up in my headphones. My headphones. Turn it up in my headphones. Audio medic. Audio medic. Audio medic. Move to the beat. Boost. Boost. Oh, this is my jam. Time to accelerate. Alright, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. F it up. Oh, I'm in the groove. Back in the mix. Check yourself. Oh, feel that healing beat. All right, heal up. Heal up. Heal up. Healing boost. Oh, I like the sound of that. That. Ooh, I must have this track on repeat. Repeat. Oh, you hear that? You hear that? Oh, let's break it down. Oh, let's break it down. Oh, let's break it. Break it. Break it down. Let's drop the beat. Beat. Let's get you healed up. Let's get you healed up. Healed up. Healed. Healed up. Yeah, let's move it, people. Yeah, let's move it. it, people. Yeah, let's pick it up. Lucio coming at you. Coming at you. Yeah, time to heal up. Oh, turn it up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another episode of Off the Wall. It's your boy, Dazzle167. We're powered by Console Gaming League, CGL. We have a very good show for you today. We going along our draft tournament interviews here. We have another captain of the draft tournament, longstanding community member, Mr. T2X. How are you doing, brother?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Today we got a lot to talk about because I think that the best part about interviewing captains for the show is that there's so many different perspectives and there's so much analysis that we can do about why they picked, who they picked, all that stuff. So we'll get into all of that. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about your SR before we get into like all the origin story and everything of yourself. Tell us a little bit about, because I know you've been in the community for a long time. What's your peak? How long have you been, a high elo player? Let us know.
My SR right now is low GM because I haven't really put in as much effort into the game as I should have been recently. But I've been in the community since season 4, like the top 500 community. I started out as a platinum player. I placed like 2,700, and I was a soldier, roadhog, 2-trick, and
wow.
I literally just climbed as soon as I started actually sweating the game and really trying and not playing with my IRLs anymore. So then Soldier Bot, who moved to Paladins, he's the one that told me to make a Twitter, and then it all went from there. I started out being friends with Nano, and then through him I was friends with Vinny. So those are my two longest friends in the top 500 community.
Okay. It makes a lot of sense. Well, let's we'll talk a little bit more about all those people and stuff like that, and your first start into Overwatch and stuff like that. But let's go even before that. Let's go way back to the origin of your gaming. When did you start playing video games? What platforms and what games were you playing?
Back when I lived at my old house, I was 9 or 10 years old, and I started playing Xbox at one of my friend's house. And we played World at War Zombies. That was the first game that I actually played, and I was really into it. And I really begged my parents to get an Xbox and to get Xbox Live, but they didn't let me for the longest time. And then I finally was able to buy his Xbox 360. So I started out on Call of Duty, and I was playing World at War for a while, and I didn't have Xbox Live. And then eventually I got MW3, and that was the game that I basically just that was the first game that I really hard grinded. And that was when my parents finally let me get Xbox Live and play that. So I ended up putting a stupid amount of hours into that game, and that's how I got my mechanical skill, I guess, on video games.
Nice. That's pretty good. Yeah, it's funny because I mean obviously I'm a little bit older than that, but I got my first I think I got my first Nintendo 64 because I played it on my friend's house all the time, and eventually he was like, you play this more than I do? Do you just want to buy it from me? Because so I did that, and that's funny. I've actually haven't heard that before here.
I got a really good deal. Yeah. That's the only reason I was able to buy it.
I got a really good deal on mine. I mean, at the time, I think I paid him $15 for the Nintendo 64, which was, unheard of, obviously. But that's awesome. That's a great start, actually. All right, so then we got that going. We see where you started gaining your mechanical skills and all that stuff. When it came to Overwatch, what led you to the game, and what were some of the heroes that you started playing?
That's actually one of the only things that is weird about my story, because I got my Xbox 360 for a really cheap price because of I bought it from my friend. I was actually so into MW3 at the time that I didn't even want to move to Xbox One for any reason, because it wasn't backwards compatible at the time. Sure. And all of my IRL friends were telling me that I should move on to Xbox One and all that. So One of my friends, his power brick for his Xbox One broke, and he like didn't want to really replace it. He just wanted to get the Xbox One S anyway. So he ended up doing that, and I was able to buy his Xbox One. So through that, he said that if I bought his in particular and actually got one to play with them, that he would give me his like file share. So then that's the only reason why I ever had Overwatch, is because I had his particular Xbox and he file shared me his Overwatch.
That's funny. That's actually really funny.
I would have never played the game otherwise.
That's actually hilarious. That like, it feels like most of your Xbox consoles are pretty much just hand me downs that just you paid for.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
I got both of them for like $40.
That's the most budget gamer thing I think I've ever heard. It's just like, yeah, it's like it's just.
I wasn't gonna buy my own console.
That's awesome. That's the definition of like a thrift gamer, somebody who's like, no, I'm good. That's pretty awesome. So, all right. So when you loaded up Overwatch, you were saying that at the beginning how you started really grinding and you drifted away from your IRL friends from playing the game and started actually grinding and gaining SR and stuff like that. What did you mentioned Soldier and Roadhog? Is there something that was about them that you were like, oh, I need to pick them up? Or is that what kind of heroes were you playing at the beginning?
It was just that I had a Call of Duty background, and Soldier's the closest thing to that, basically.
Makes sense.
So I picked him up, and I was like good at him, I guess. I mean, I was Diamond player, but he was like basically my one trick for the longest time. And then when I started just like flexing and like learning what because for the longest time I didn't know what Lucio did like at all. That was just the one character I remember in general. I didn't remember what his abilities did or any of that. So once I actually started like learning all the characters' abilities and like playing every character just enough to like learn what their abilities do, that's when I started like climbing. And then I like realized like counters, like you shouldn't like play Soldier into dive, stuff like that.
Sure. Okay. Now you learned this early on. Is there something that for you clicked, or was it just something like I just learned the characters? Because I mean, for a lot of people in those positions for platinum and diamonds, I think the biggest issue is that they might learn the hero, but they don't necessarily know the composition or what works with what. What was it for you that clicked that was allowed you to like gain SR and start actually grinding the game and getting better?
Yeah, you definitely got to have a mix of both, because there's a lot of people down in low SR that are either all aim and they like don't know any of the like compositions or anything, or they know all the compositions but they don't have any mechanical skills. So I think definitely coming from Call of Duty, I had a mix. I had a mix of both. Once I like finally started to learn the characters, because coming from Call of Duty, I definitely like had like my aim and everything like really like tuned in. By the time like I finally got to a sensitivity I was comfortable on, and like actually started like getting comfortable with the characters, that's when I actually started climbing SR. Because you've got to have a mix of both, otherwise you just won't climb unless you have like stupid insane aim, or just like you just know comp so well that you don't really need to be like a carry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, so somebody's in chat. They're saying they don't really know you. What's the SR? We mentioned that at the beginning of the show, but can you repeat again, like the SR that you've been and so far, just for the people in chat?
My peak SR is 4438, and the SR that I am right now is like I think I'm like 4012.
Okay.
So my peak this season is only like 4130. I haven't really gotten up that much this season, but I stream and do all that on some like Masters accounts all the time, and always play around Masters.
Nice. All right, so let's drift on to the draft tournament, because I think this is probably going to be the bulk of the interview. It's going to be really really interesting. Oh, okay. Before we continue, let's acknowledge the fact that Headrammer over there gifting 5 different subs. Thank you so much, Headrammer. Obviously a good friend of the show, so thanks a lot for that. Headrammer with the big subs. All right, well, let's talk about the draft tournament. Okay, so a big part of the people voting and stuff like that for some of the the initial voting, you became a captain through voting, right? You weren't one of the people that were necessarily chosen. So what was some of the selling points? What were you pitching to people in order for you to vote? Obviously, you were already a member of the community and people knew you, but you know, there's got to be more than just that. What was it for you that you were pitching to people?
I think the fact that I've been in like the not only the community but like the teaming side of the community. Like you can have a Twitter account through Overwatch on Xbox and be in the community, but if like I've been like making teams and like playing competitively like throughout all the Overguard tournaments, all the stuff in the past with the Overwatch X League and all that stuff that used to go on seasons past. I've been playing in all of that, so I think a lot of people like saw that, especially because my team's always performed like well above average. That they figured that I would make a good team for that. Also, I made it very obvious through Twitter and through my stream that I like really wanted to be a captain. That I had some good ideas, people that I wanted to pick up, people that I didn't want to pick up, and I I made it very clear that I wanted to be a captain. So I think a lot of people acknowledged that and saw that there was a lot of people on that list that didn't like, they only did it as like a joke. There were a couple people that were serious about it, but the people that got picked, I think, were the people that were going to actually take it seriously.
Nice. And that's obviously that's a very important part of it, right? People that you know are going to be able to scrim, people who know you're going to, you know, take it seriously and all that. You also mentioned to me you mentioned this to me privately, but you're the type of person who is not only well known and established in the community, but also somebody who is liked by a lot of people in general. Like you don't have a lot of people who you either dislike or they dislike you. You're the type of person that you know, doesn't have a lot of enemies. So when you mentioned you know who to pick up and who not to pick up, did you mean that in a way of like I'm not gonna pick this person up because I think that they're not good for what I'm thinking about the team, or just people in general that you're just like, nah, I don't think they'll mesh well with me personally?
There wasn't too many people that I just didn't like. There's not too many people in this community that I just don't like. Also, I don't think there's a whole lot of people in this community that don't like me, but there was a lot of, since the tournament is you're not allowed to use MNK. There's a lot of people that have to use hand cams, and I just feel like there's a lot of MNK players that aren't like going to be able to play well with a controller. So
sure.
That's one of the reasons why I didn't want to pick a lot of people. But at the same time, I mean, obviously there was some players that a lot of people were like, a lot of the captains were going to avoid either way. So it's not that I don't like them, but like there was just a lot of people on the sign up list. So
yeah,
you have to try to pick the best one to try to win the league or try to win the tournament.
And speaking of the best ones to win the tournament, everybody had a certain type of theory or way of crafting their team. For you, what was the overall strategy that you wanted to use in order to draft certain people? What were you going for?
Well, everybody went with basically a different strategy. Like you can tell what the captains went with. I went off of flexibility. You can, like, Dexento tried to draft his team off of dive because he thought that was going to be the meta, because nobody thought that Ghost was going to be like relevant by the time the tourney came around. So everybody drafted a different strategy that they thought could have ended up being meta. So like Dexento drafted dive, like Lagish or Mocha drafted like he drafted like hard bunker comp. He like drafted like a sim player, like he's going to play Orisa. Like Vinny drafted like based off of Hammond. So, and my team just like, I wanted to draft off of flexibility. So like we ran dive a couple times in our first scrim. We were running a lot of Orisa because ZR Midnight like loves to run Orisa, and Orisa is like really good right now. And then like at the same time we can like flex to goats and like play Ryan Zarya comps the same. So that's what I try to go off of. And like so far it's worked decently well.
Nice. So that's kind of leads me to my next question, which is, you know, there was an idea that people had before they wanted to scrim, right? Because obviously the patch had just been released, or I'm not sure if it had already been released or was about to release, or had, you know, I wasn't sure I don't remember for the draft tournament specifically, but it was, everything was relatively new. We at least knew what we were gonna get, and everybody had their own theories on what was gonna work and whatnot. Once you drafted your team and you had an idea about what you wanted to draft and how you wanted your team to be, which in this case would be flexible, what was it that happened in scrims for you that you solidified in your mind? Oh, okay, this is probably the best comp for us to run based on what we have.
The first scrim that we had, we actually played like pretty. We played okay, based on the fact that it was like basically a pickup team, and none of us have really
Sure.
played before, and it was our first scrim. But we didn't play very well because our comms were kind of iffy. Like we were engaging on the fights that like we shouldn't have been engaging on, and like we weren't like fluid in that respect. So our second scrim we played a lot better because we had our shot caller who is Tempers. He's a UK Lucio player, and he like basically just like told all of us like which fights to take, which fights not to take, and then like you instantly saw an increase like on how well our team was just working together. So that's what basically made the big difference for us. Um, I think that like in our first scrim, like we were good in like when we were in the middle of fights and we had to like focus certain targets. Like our dive was good. Like we could fix initiating a little bit better because we were standing there and taking damage before we dove in. But once we were like in the middle of a fight, our dive like coordination was good, and like that's something that you can't really like build upon. You just like either have it or you don't. It's like based on like mechanics. Like you can call out all this stuff to all you want, but like if you don't have like a person that like knows to save their cooldowns to dive onto the next target, then you're not gonna like be able to get onto the next target like efficiently. So to just be able to have like people that even if you're not calling out, they know kind of what character to go to next is nice to have because that just means that you have people on your team that have game sense. So it went okay the first scrim, but definitely once we got our shot caller, I saw an instant improvement. So that was huge for us.
Now that's interesting. I think that definitely adds to the dynamic of being able to have a bunch of flexible players and also becoming the glue, right? Because at some point, even if you have the best players, like you said, you didn't know who to engage. You don't know. You needed somebody to become that glue in that
You need
performance.
those comms, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but let me ask you this: if you have, these scrims going on, right, and you have a very flexible team now. The issue that I would assume would be relevant is that you have a lot of flexible players. So what composition do you go for? Because to be fair, right now it's sort of like a wild west of compositions. There's so many that are open now because people are just don't know exactly what's gonna be the best composition. So for you, what was something that you ended up being like, okay, let's run this first and see how it works, and just what type of compositions did you go for in some of these scrims?
The reason why I wanted to draft my team particularly off of flexibility is because I knew that goats was still going to be it wasn't going to be meta, but I knew that if you had to run like if the other team was running goats, you had to run goats back in order to counter it. So that's what we did, and that's what's worked well for us so far. We played against a team and they insta-locked goats, and once we switched to goats and like we just ran goats better than them, that's what's worked so far against that comp. But there's also been a lot of comps running like multiple DPS comps right now. So like we played against like 3 DPS comps a lot, and that's countered pretty well by dive. So we can play dive like really easily into that, especially like double sniper. The one thing that like you kind of have to watch for is you were saying, how do you know what comp to run? You just kind of have to like look at what the other team is playing and then play into that. The one comp that we haven't really been able to counter yet is we scrimmed Vinny's team, who's probably the best team in the entire tournament right now, and we kind of got stomped by them because they were running like a really weird comp. They were running like Roadhog, Zarya, and Hammond, and then like Sombra and Doomfist. So like it was just like so much stuff to deal with like all at the same time, and it was like really difficult for us, and we had like no idea how to do it, especially because we couldn't just mirror the comp because I don't play Hammond and we don't have really a Doomfist player, so it was like really weird to play against, and I don't know how we're gonna end up countering it, but yeah, basically like for us, we've just looked at what the enemy team is running, and then we just run according to what they're playing.
Gotcha. So let me just throw in some theory here because I feel like, and I think chat's also saying that there's a lot of goats. So let me ask you this. It seems that like obviously goats is still prevalent. It's still something that people are using, and it's also a counter to itself, right? So you go goats, and somebody and the other team go goats to counter it, and the better goats team wins. But you were mentioning how there's also been a lot of DPS compositions. Vinny's team had an interesting outtake on some of his compositions as well. Do you think so? For some of these scrims, right? Obviously, you're adapting, and your team is flexible enough to adapt. So at that point, it's really just about communication and synergy and stuff like that, and not necessarily compositions. What do you think the circle of I guess the circle of compositions would be for this meta right now? Because I know you mentioned goats, counters goats, but you also said that there were compositions such as like the DPS compositions, maybe 3 or 4 DPS depending on what it is, and you said that dive goes against that. So if for some reason, what would be who would play quad DPS or triple DPS? Like why would you pick that composition? Because so far I haven't heard any reason for anybody to run that composition in specific. So for people running that, what do you think counters? What do you think people? Why would they run that DPS comp?
Okay, so obviously Goats was meta for the longest time, and it was basically just which Goats team was better was the team that was going to win. That was like what happened in the Lame Sauce tournament. Mm-hmm. It was basically just Goats v Goats, and just like whichever team played it better is the team that won. But one of the teams that made it to the finals, the Throne, they made it to the finals by playing Hammond Mercy, and they had quad DPS, and it literally just like with Goats, the only mobility that you really have is your Diva and your Lucio. Those are the only people that have like vertical mobility. So when you play a comp that is centered around Hammond, who boops people up into the air and makes them immobile for a couple seconds, and you have hit scans that are just able to sit on high ground and just rain down, the Diva has to pick one of those like DPS to go onto. So like you can only like dive one at one time basically, because unless you're playing like Winston Goats, which a lot of people didn't play. Because like nobody really thought of that during like the time of the tourney. It was all basically just like Ryan players. I don't think it's not that people didn't think of playing Winston. I just think that at the time of the tourney, most people were just Ryan players because everybody was just playing Goats, and it was just Goats for like the longest time. So everybody was just so used to playing that, and they weren't used to playing against quad DPS. But I think it's definitely like quad DPS is just centered around like having so much stuff that you have to dive onto at one time that it's like overwhelming. So just dive is like the only comp that I think is like good against it, because you can get on multiple things at one time. You can have like your Winston and Diva dive something. You can have your Genji and Tracer dive something. But like dive has always been centered around all 6 people going on to one target, moving from target to target. But I think that against quad DPS, since it's solo heal Mercy, you can get like on 2 things at once, and one of them will have to die, and then the other 2 can rotate to the other character. So that's what you should do against that comp, but not a lot of people did, and that's why that's becoming meta. The meta is like pretty open right now too. At the same time, because nobody really knows what to run with the new character. So like Bonker is still good, like Goats is like still good as long as you're mirroring. Like just like Ryan Zarya 222 comps are even still good. Like triple DPS with solo tank Orisa. Like there's lots of stuff that you can do right now to play against different comps in the game.
Nice. So and you know that's gonna bring me to my next question, which I think is gonna be it's going to be something telling, because I feel like we've only had one day so far of the OWL, but like you mentioned, it was just like the meta is now, obviously for console and even PC ranked and everything like that. It's very open, and we kind of saw a glimpse of that in a little bit of a few of the matches. I'm not sure if you were able to catch any of them, but there was quite a variety of different compositions, and it seems to me like I think I saw this in Winston's lab yesterday. Out of all the games, even though it was pretty, there was a lot of different ones. I think the most picked composition was the quote unquote floats, which is the flying Winston goat. So now, do you think that is going to affect how this people are going to be scrimming into this tournament? Do you think that might be a type of composition that a lot of people will play, and what counters it?
I just know that Sombra is really broken right now. So Sombra is definitely like one of the best characters that you can play into virtually any composition right now. I know that Hammond is really good. And not a lot of people are really abusing what Hammond can do. I mean, I understand in the Overwatch League because you have CC abilities, but playing against Hammond on Vinny's team was really like bad for us. We didn't really know what to do. We kind of lost our footing. Like in theory, just CC abilities, stunning should like work against that, but it didn't work against that the way that we expected it to. So I think that definitely just Sombra is the character that a lot of people are going to end up playing to counter that. At the same time, it's just another one of those GOATS comps where you just have to mirror and run it better.
Okay.
We haven't played a whole lot of Winston GOATS because we tried playing it a couple times, but our team hasn't really played with it that much. We played Dive, which is a different style. Since you have DPS to follow up, it's a lot easier to do. Like when you're playing Winston GOATS, you have like follow up. Like you basically just have a Zarya bubble, like because I'm playing main tank, so like this is the way that I see it. You basically just have a Zarya bubble, like you don't have like DPS follow up, so you just gotta like out sustain them and like burn through their heals. So you have to kind of initiate the right way, and then you just have to let your team like walk up behind you, and that's like how you win on that. It's like we haven't played too much like on that comp yet, so I don't really know all that much about it.
Okay, so like, let me ask you this then. Let's move on to your team specifically. You talked about particularly flexible players. I don't think I have a list currently on me, but would you like to go? Let's go one by one through each of the people that you drafted and why, so that we can talk about like what was your mentality behind each one of those picks. Let's talk about I don't remember what the first pick was, but tell us about your first pick.
I picked ZR Midnight first. I wanted to be able to draft him because I know that he can play Roadhog very well, and I knew Orisa was going to be really good by the time of the tournament. He could play Zarya really well, which works in like GOATS, and then obviously Ryan Zarya 2-2-2 comps, and he can flex D.Va pretty decently. But I wanted to be able to pick him because he plays a lot of Bastion and comp, and Bunker I knew was going to be really good, so we can put him on Bastion and run one of our other players on D.Va. So that was my first pick, and my second pick was Hyper Execute. He's a West Coast DPS player, and he plays mostly Tracer. That's what I drafted him for, but he can flex to like Brig and GOATS, or he could play Zarya and GOATS, which he's been playing really well on Zarya and GOATS. But he's a flex, like hit scan projectile player, and he's played really, really well in all of our scrims so far. So that was my first and second picks.
Yeah, go down the list. Let's keep going through what the other picks and why.
Okay, my next pick was Gerard, and he's a West Coast off support player. He's a really good Zen. He's been playing really well so far. We've had him on main support a couple of games, which is I'd rather have him on Zen, but there's only so many comps you can run Zen into right now because you just don't have enough heals to do that. My other off support that I picked right after him is Tempers, who's our in-game leader, and he's like an EU Lucio player, and he's really vocal, and he knows like which fights to take, which characters to dive on, and it makes the game a whole lot easier to play when you have somebody like that on your team. The next player that I drafted was FRM, and he's a projectile DPS off tank flex. So we've ran him a lot on D.Va, and we've had a lot of success with him playing D.Va because he knows how to contest high ground the right way. And that was like one of the big things that I've noticed is that when a Hanzo or McCree or Soldier is sitting on high ground, he always knows to go get on them. So just like not necessarily to kill them all the time, but just to like force them off that position so that we can move in and initiate. He's also been pretty good at eating grabs the right way and just played pretty well overall. I was surprised because I didn't draft him as fast as people probably could have. But then I think my next pick
Wrap
was
it up.
TJ. I drafted him because he's an off tank hit scan flex, and I wanted to have another off tank in case ZR couldn't make it because I mean ZR is like a cool guy, but I thought he was going to be one of the more inconsistent ones in the team. Like I thought he would. I knew he was going to take it seriously in the tournament because he wanted to play, but I didn't know how seriously he was going to take the scrims and all that. So it was kind of a gamble from my end to like draft him, but it ended up turning out fine. He's been showing up and all that. So I drafted TJ, and then I drafted Ionitrix. I drafted him because he plays off support, but he also can flex to main tank. So that's the reason why I drafted him, because I wanted an off support player, but I also at the same time I needed somebody like in case I really couldn't make it, which like I can't imagine that's happening, but like in case something like off the wall happens that I couldn't make it to a scrim or something, he could fill in for me. And then I drafted T Sporty and It's a Chris, and I drafted T Sporty to play Farah and Hanzo. I drafted them for projectile because I wanted a projectile sub in case FRM couldn't make it, and then It's a Chris can play main support.
Okay, so those were obviously the last two were your free agent pickups, right?
Yep.
Okay, so nice. So that is definitely a well-rounded team as far as like, you know, why picking certain people and stuff like that. Is there anybody that you would have loved to pick but you didn't get to because they either got picked or you didn't have enough space in your team? Like some honorable mentions, if anything.
The one guy that I wanted to pick really bad, I wanted to first pick him, was I wanted to pick Dankest. I was really deciding between Dankest and ZR, and I ended up going with ZR because it was just like a really safe first round pick. I wanted to play the safe route because he's always played well in tourney play. Dankest doesn't have too much experience like in tournament play. He's only played on like one tournament team, which was the Throne in the LXS finals. But I ended up going with ZR just for the safe pick. But one guy that I would have drafted first overall if I had the chance, he was a captain, so I couldn't. So I would have drafted Vinny if I had an opportunity, but he was another captain, so that's the reason why I couldn't pick him. Also, Harvey, he was probably the best support in the entire draft. He's an EU player. He got drafted later. I don't know if anything could have gone different, I might have picked him too.
Nice. And obviously, I mean, Vinny and Dankis, who are both on the same team, I believe. And then Harvey, which is, as I've been told by a lot of people, especially different captains, that he's, like you said, he's definitely one of the best support players, if not the best support player in the draft so far. He got picked pretty early on as well, so that was something for sure. So we talked about like the different strategies in getting some of these teams. We talked about like who you would have drafted, who you would have liked, and stuff like that. And now that we have an idea about what's been going on as far as like the meta and what you like to play, who do you think is? I mean, you mentioned how you think Vinny is definitely one of the top teams so far. What are some other honorable mentions and in so far in the scrims that you thought, okay, well, they're definitely competition for us, and who are some of the people who surprised you, either because they were good or because they were like, oh, I thought they would have been better?
The one team that, I mean, obviously Vinny's team's really good, but we haven't had a chance to scrim them yet, but Kraft's team is apparently really good. I'm not sure what they've been running, but I've heard that they're one of the best teams. Flaffy obviously was the MVP because he played so well in Ana in the Lame Sauce tournament. He's obviously a really good player. Crafts is a stellar DPS, like off-tank flex. So they're a team that we definitely have to play pretty soon to figure out. But the team that played really well against us was Sham's team. Sham had like a really good goats team, and like they're obviously that's what they're used to running. Sham's like one of the best Zaryas right now, so they know how to run goats the right way, which is going to be interesting because I'm gonna have to scrim them again with Tempers, our in-game leader. I want to scrim them again to see like with our in-game leader, if we'll be able to compete against them goats versus goats, because I think that'll be a big thing if we play them in the actual tournament. We're gonna have to be able to beat them on their own comp, and that's one big thing. We did scrim Ali's team, which is Razaki. I think that's his gamer tag. I think that's how you pronounce it. We scrimmed his team, and the one player that like played a lot better than I thought he would. He got first round picked, which was a huge surprise to me because I was thinking about picking him, but I didn't think he was going to go that fast at all. I thought I was going to be able to get him in like the third or fourth round. That's why I didn't draft him very fast. Was Pingu. He's a really good support player. He plays on PC, and he's not just a support player. You can flex anything. I've seen him play really well on everything that he's played in my games. But he played like super well. He was always in a position to where if you dived him, he was like next to like a hacked Sombra health back or like just always in the right position so that he could get the peel that he needed to live and survive. So he just really surprised me by like his knowledge of the game, and like just the way that he leads their team just like makes a huge difference for them, I can tell.
Nice. Now, one thing that we haven't talked about that was obviously very huge for the patch and then this scrim coming on was Baptiste. We haven't really talked about his impact on the game itself. We did see a little bit of Baptiste in OWL last night. What has Baptiste brought to your meta in this draft tournament? Has he been big? Has there been anybody who has played him really well that you've seen? What's going on with that character?
We don't really have a Baptiste player on our team. We've ran it a couple times with T-Sporty on Baptiste, but it hasn't worked particularly well. Baptiste was a lot of people thought that he was going to end up making GOAT stronger, which I don't think he did at all. He has his ultimate basically like it's really good to get like about shredding through shields because it gets your team through those shields like really really quick. Because it doubles your damage, so that's one thing that it is really good for. If you're playing against like Bunker with double shield, and if they don't have a diva, Baptiste could be a really good option because it literally gets through those shields so fast. Probably another like character that like is better than him in a lot of these compositions is Zen. I think it's just because a lot of people know how to play Zen already. That's why like Baptiste hasn't been ran, but I know that the team that drafted Bunker, Mocha's team, he said that he was going to be running a lot of Baptiste because Harvey's already like one of the best Baptistes. He's already put a bunch of time into it on quick play and all that, so he's already like one of the better players on that character.
Sure.
So they're probably going to be running Baptiste a lot, but we haven't had a whole lot of time to experiment with or against him yet. We've only ran a couple of scrims since he came out, so.
Okay, so I mean theoretically there hasn't been a lot that you've been able to see that has had a lot of impact for him. Let's talk about him as a theory right now, because obviously you said you tried him out. What compositions did you try him out? I believe T-Sporty was playing him, right? So what compositions were you putting him in, and do you think there was anything that you didn't try that you might try later on with Baptiste?
We tried to run him in place of a Zen and Goats, which I don't think is particularly the play because we didn't really think about how big of a advantage the Discord gives you in Goats. And the Discord is like a big thing. Like obviously Baptiste can like put out his own damage. Zen can too. But the only time where he can like amplify damage for the rest of your team is with his ultimate. He only has that once every like couple fights or whatever. So
sure.
The damage thing was definitely big because you have to be able to melt through the other team's shield or heals whenever you're playing Goats composition. That's like the entire like purpose of it. You basically have to put a Discord on the other main tank and shred through them. So he hasn't been able to fit very well into Goats, but one comp that we could end up running him on in the future is our Bunker comp. If we ever end up playing that again, we'll probably run a Baptiste with it. The one thing that he does get, he does get kind of countered by dive. He doesn't like he has his jump ability, but like if he's playing in like a bad position and he has a really big hitbox, there's like not much you can like. You can jump on him like pretty easily and kill him. So dive against him is definitely really good. So you definitely have to play him in like a comp that like is meant to like hard counter dive, which Bunker isn't a counter that's like hard counter to dive. Particularly because a lot of people do play dive against Bunker to counter it. But if you play Bunker the right way and you play your Baptiste like really close to your main tank and your Bunker characters, then it might work a lot better. But we haven't had a chance to try that yet.
That's really interesting. I always felt that bunker was could be very strong against dive, but then on the opposite side, dive could be strong against bunker just because you're able to pick people off and stuff like that. What do you think is the if you are playing bunker, you think dive is the best chance to go against a bunker type comp, correct?
I think that a good dive is better in any situation. Yeah, a good dive is really good against bunker. If you have a good diva player that's able to, not all bunker has a bastion, but against bastion, a good diva player is needed because you need to be able to get close enough, and diva matrix is one of the only things that can get you close enough to a bastion to be able to kill him. Gotcha. And if you have a Genji and Tracer on him at the same time, there's you can only shoot at one of them at once.
Gotcha. So definitely, and I'm seeing a lot of definitely like that circle we were talking about, what counters what and stuff like that. So bunker seems to be like the type of composition that, like you said, can get countered by a good dive. And then obviously dive could probably get countered by goats. So if you in this, and I'm just trying to get an idea of like the type of compositions that would be run through a scrim. If you're running bunker, right, and you see the dive and the dive is working, what do you do in those in that term? Do you switch to goats? Do you switch to is goats still gonna be the default comp for a lot of people to run in order to we're losing, we gotta go goats? Do you think that's still gonna be like the default comp for a lot of people?
Yeah, I think goats is definitely still good in that respect. One comp that I think a couple teams were planning on running is back in the day, when dive was actually meta, was Winston Diva, Genji Tracer, obviously. But a lot of people would take out Diva and run a Pharah Mercy instead. So I noticed that some teams are going to be wanting to play that. They're going to want to run triple DPS with a Pharah instead of a Diva. And if they do that, then we're just going to run goats, but we're going to run an Ana instead of a Zen. And we'll just be able to anti the Winston every time he jumps in. That's our plan for that.
Gotcha. Interesting. Let's talk. Let's go a little bit more off topic, because you mentioned that you stream as well. We today it was particularly interesting because somebody had tagged me and a bunch of other streamers on Twitter. Jane was looking for more console streamers, and he was like, there's not a lot, which is very true. There isn't a lot of console streamers, especially Overwatch. And he was mentioning that, and people were talking about different streams. You stream as well, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when did that start? When did you start streaming? And you mentioned a few things about people hosting you and stuff like that. Talk to us a little bit about your stream.
I've had an Elgato for a long time. I've had it since I played Call of Duty, obviously, because I was big into the sniping and team scene back when I played that. So I was posting YouTube videos, and that's what I used it for a long time ago. But I saw some of my friends, obviously for the longest time, Tensa had the monopoly on every Overwatch Xbox stream that there was. He was constantly the one that was pulling 150 plus views most of his streams. So he was the guy that was streaming most of the time during Xbox Overwatch. So I just started doing it because I was able to get my face cam all set up, and I finally got my OBS, and I just decided to do it one day, that I just streamed, and I didn't do it through the Xbox because I've done it through the Xbox a couple times, but I just decided to stream, and I had my face cam because I found I had a face cam in my house. I just never used it, so I plugged it in and it worked, and then I had my overlay made from one of my close friends, so I decided to throw that on, and then I just started adding stuff piece by piece, and now it's gotten to where it is now.
Nice. And what type of success have you seen from your streams? Talk to us, the difference between the early days of streaming and so far now.
I remember from obviously I haven't made it very far as a streamer yet. I only have a couple hundred followers on Twitch, but I remember when I first started streaming, it was most of the time it was just me in my own chat, just talking to the one viewer that I have, which is myself. And it's pretty difficult to be an engaging streamer when that's the kind of audience that you're broadcasting to. And once you get over that hump, it makes it a lot easier. because you normally, like, most of the time, even if they're not talking in chat, I'll have like 6 or 7 people in my stream just watching. So it makes it a lot easier for me to just like talk and like feel like there's actually people there listening to like what I'm saying, rather than just like me sitting there talking to an empty stream. It was really like it gets really discouraging, and I understand the small streamers, but at the same time, you have to keep being engaging and entertaining, because if people do come into your stream, then they're not going to stay if you're going to be boring. So
Nice. Well, listen, I think that's most of the questions that we have so far for you. You mentioned you stream. We're gonna be hosting somebody here soon at the end of the show. Let them know that they came from Off the Wall and stuff like that. But before we do that, do you have any shout outs that you want to give, or any different or you could plug in your social media and stuff like that, and your Twitch, so people can find you?
yeah, I have my Twitch. It's T2X_OW. I can put that in like on my Twitter or whatever all the time. I every time I stream, it's on my Twitter, and it's T2X_OW too. So
Nice. Well, listen, good luck to your team in the tournament. I look forward to watching the tournament itself. I look forward to hopefully they'll let me go in and watch some of the scrims. I'm trying to get a little bit in there so I could like at least watch it. Yeah, well, I would love to cast, but even if I just get to watch the scrim itself, just like as a spectator, that would be great too, because I like watching high elo players play the game and just watch the different compositions that they come up with. So I'd love to just watch in general. But yeah, that would be great. Good luck to you in the tournament. Hope you do really well. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Good luck to you on your streams and everything like that as well. And as far as like usually at the end of the show, I let everybody know that this is obviously a community podcast. If you're interested in being on the show, let me know. My Twitter DMs are open. You could contact me. I will definitely get back to you. I have a list of people that I am going to get on the show, so there is quite a bit of a waiting list, so don't worry if I'm not if I tell you that I don't know exactly when you're going to get on, but I will definitely get you on the show at some point. So keep letting me know, keep bugging me to tell me, hey, remember me, I got to be on the show, because I'll definitely put you on at some point. So like I said, that next week we'll have a few other guests. Look out for that. I'll keep everybody posted on Twitter, twitter.com/dazzle167. So look over there for the next postings and stuff like that. And let's see, it looks like I'm looking for somebody to
Scary Dragons.
Scary Dragons. Perfect. Let's do some
Scary Dragons.
Let's do some Scary Dragons. All right, so we're gonna raid Scary here. As always, let Scary know that Dazzle sent you. Also let him know to actually hit some of his shots on Baptiste, because I haven't seen him do that yet. So definitely let him know all of that stuff. We're gonna raid him here shortly. Guys, I will see you at some point next week. I'll probably stream myself later on, just playing some Overwatch. So later on tonight, we'll see some of that. And until then, guys, see you later. Bye.
Hi.
All right, it's 5, 4, 3.